If you're not familiar with the Murdaugh murder trial that has just finished closing arguments at the Colleton County Courthouse in Waterboro, South Carolina, you may just be in the minority. A lot of people are watching it. But if you haven't, don't worry. I have a strong feeling a movie is coming. This is the most bizarre story I have ever heard in all my life. My wife and I have been following this case at least since June 2021, when we started listening to the Murdaugh podcast. Yes, I host a podcast, but I also listen to others, especially when we're driving back and forth down the road. Podcasts have a way of making trips much shorter. Just a little free advertisement there. But especially the story of the powerful Murdaugh family. If you have been following this, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, it is next to impossible for me to explain it to you. There's so many moving parts, so many side streets during this journey. There are at least 6 dead bodies also. For the last almost 6 weeks, we have been watching the murder trial concerning 2 of those bodies. Alex Murdaugh was accused of brutally killing his wife Maggie and their son Paul at a place called Moselle near the dog kennels. This well-known and powerful trial attorney has also been accused of, and has now admitted it under oath in court, to stealing somewhere around $14 million from his clients and his law firm. He was an expert lawyer who won big awards for suing people. The problem is the people he was representing did not exactly get the money. According to the state, Alex's financial crimes were like a huge storm gathering on June the 7th, 2021. His law firm realized they had been missing money and brought it to his attention. A hearing was also scheduled for 3 days later where his financial crimes were about to become public knowledge. The hearing was about the boat accident where his son Paul had been accused of driving under the influence in one of their boats when a beautiful young lady on that boat was killed. Alec Murdaugh suddenly got a reprieve when his family was murdered, as the entire community rallied around him at the awful event that had taken place. A few months after the murders, when his law firm had investigated enough to realize he had stolen a lot of money from them, he was terminated from his family law firm. That same day, he staged a shooting on the side of the road, saying someone had tried to murder him while he was changing a tire. All of a sudden, the community came to his rescue again. Another reprieve. There's one thing that is for certain in this story. Alec Murdaugh is a liar. He is a proven liar. He wouldn't know the truth if it walked in his jail cell for a cup of coffee. This is the story of a powerful but corrupt family from Hampton, South Carolina, that goes back several generations. They are well known and have been feared and revered by many. They ran the law enforcement community and the courts in this area for many years. There's no way I can tell you this entire story in this short little opening for this episode, but I can tell you I'm pretty well versed in all of it. We noticed last week that our friend Judy Sims Thompson posted a photo at the courthouse in Colleton County. I later saw her on TV in the courthouse the day the defendant was on the witness stand. So I gave my friend a call. Turns out she knows more about this case than I do. She also has a strong opinion as to what the verdict should be, as I do. Just so you know, there are varying opinions. Some say Alex is not guilty. Others think he is guilty as he can get. There are others who think the jury will be deadlocked. So for the next 45 minutes or so, Judy and I will deliberate this case as if we were on the jury that has most likely began deliberating at about the same time this episode is released. Nobody knows what a jury will do, but Judy and I know what we would do.
Viewing life from a hearse. worse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.
This is Bruce Goddard, and you're listening to the View from a Hearse podcast. I got my friend, as I have already mentioned, Judy Sims Thompson on the phone. And Judy, you've been following this whole saga for a long time, at least a couple of years. And I noticed on Facebook that you were in Waterboro, saw your picture in front of the courthouse, and then you posted that you got there at 4:45 in the morning or something, got in line, and then I saw you in the courthouse, and I think it was the day that Murdaugh took the stand. Is that right? Is that when you were there?
That's correct.
So let's talk about, Judy, how you got to watching this thing or keeping up with it and why you went to Waterboro. Let's just talk about how you got involved with this thing.
So actually, it was on the way to Indianapolis when Georgia was in the national championship. That's the first time that I started listening to the podcast about this story. I had seen some things, but really didn't pay too much attention to it. So I got deeply involved in that road trip, and quickly became obsessed with all that was going on.
It is addicting, isn't it? This whole thing. Oh my God.
It's absolutely bizarre. And if I had all the free time in the world, I would just be running all over the place trying to figure out. And I'd look in every rabbit hole because there's like a million rabbit holes. It's amazing.
Trying to explain this case to somebody, they said, "Tell me about this case." That's impossible. All you can do is laugh. I don't know how to tell you that. Yeah.
I can't tell you quick enough to make you understand the layers of all that has gone on within this family, this particular family, and the generations prior to this particular family.
Right.
Absolutely amazing.
So how did you end up going to Waterboro?
So quite frankly, on a whim. In fact, I called a girlfriend who knew about this case, but was not as obsessed that I am. And so I talked her into going, and quite honestly, the only way she would go with me is if I promised her a day at Hilton Head prior to going to Walterboro. So we did that. But it was very short, spur of the moment. Let's just do it. Why not? Sort of thing. Why did I want to do it? I wanted to be in the courtroom with this man. I really did. I wanted to sit in the same room with him. I wanted to look at the jurors. I wanted to see what the jurors looked like, just for my own take. And I wanted to feel what it was like in the courtroom. And so that's why we went, as I said, very spur of the moment.
And you went the right day because you got him when he was on the stand.
We sure did. We sure did.
So what were your impressions and looking at the jury and how engaged are they? And then you also, part of that question is, you're looking at this family, the two brothers, the sister, the Buster, the son, or Bus, or whatever he calls him. What was your impressions of all that?
Well, it's interesting. So all of them were there. Buster was there. The sister was there. John Marvin was there, and Randolph came in at some point in time. I didn't see John Marvin's wife, but the family was there, kind of all on the same row. When I looked at the jurors, I guess I kept looking for something, although I'm not sure what it was, like something that would stick out to me. They seemed typical from the town people that I saw, which would make perfect sense. No one particularly stuck out to me. They had more women than men, and quite honestly, I can't tell you the breakdown. I just don't know. I don't remember what it was. How did that benefit the defense or the prosecutor? So I'm trying to figure all these things out in my mind. But the jury seemed engaged. When we were there, I couldn't see the front row of the jurors. I could see the second row who sat up a little higher. A couple of them wearing masks, but they all seemed to be engaged from what I saw. Of course, we've heard reports.
They have to be worn out doing that all day, every day. And the other thing, Judy, let me ask you this. I know they're going home. They're not sequestered. And
correct.
There's no way in the world anybody can tell me that they're not seeing social media with your phones in front of you and seeing what people are saying about all this. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, it's everywhere you turn. So, if I'm a juror and I've been instructed not to do these things and I'm married, my husband can do whatever he wants. And so I can see those things. He can, I can read those things. So I absolutely believe that they have access to social media, and I would feel certain human nature would lead them in that direction. I mean, it probably would me.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know how you keep from it.
right.
And then I think, in my mind, that probably helps the defense, because when you listen to these talking heads on any of these law and order channels or true crime, or whatever it is, a lot of them are defense attorneys. They really lean towards the defense more than they do the state. Don't you agree?
Well, I think some of them do. I think the people like the Eric Bland, who speaks sometimes with Mandy's
he's
podcast.
different. He's different. Yeah, absolutely.
Eric is a slam dunk.
Yeah.
And knows him and knows the family and knows the ins and outs. So I think if anybody's listening to another lawyer, and which, by the way, Eric was there, has been there every day. Joe McCullough, we spoke to him outside of the courtroom. Quite honestly, I just wanted my picture made with him. Now, Joe McCullough is Connor's lawyer.
Yeah, he's the guy he's the white hair guy.
There with the white,
hair.
beautiful hair. That's him. That's him.
Yeah.
But he's there every day. They're taking notes. They're writing constantly. And they're sitting on the prosecution side.
But when I hear him talk, McCullough, he seems, what I've heard, he seems to kind of believing on the side of defense when he's talking, what I've heard.
Well, what he told us was that the first day Alec was on, which was Thursday, we spoke to him Thursday night. We went early to see where the courthouse was, to get the layout, what we needed to do. And we just saw him and spoke to him. And after I had my picture made, he said, "How do you think the state's doing?" And I said, well, my little 2-cent opinion, I wasn't impressed today with the beginning of the cross-exam. He said, yeah, it seemed a little weak to me. And that was basically all he said, but I was surprised he even said that.
Right.
So I'm not sure, again, where he was going with the cross-exam and what he chose to do and allow. It was kind of strange to me. But the impression, it was very electric in that courtroom. And in fact, we had to be admonished actually once for not outbursts, but sized or those sorts of comments. He admonished the jurors room that we had to not react in any way.
Right.
So I think several comments were made that nobody in the courtroom believed, to be quite honest. So
the Judge Newman, in my mind, has been incredible. I mean, my goodness, he's been impressive. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. The man is a rock star. He cannot be wavered. He's very mild-mannered. He's very calm. He's slow speaking. He's deliberate. He knows what he's doing. And what my takeaway of Judge Newman is, there will be no antics in this courtroom. And the antics seem to be coming from the defense.
Yeah.
And he will not tolerate that.
He doesn't take anything off anybody. He definitely is in control of that courtroom. And you're right. He does it in a mild, meager way, but he's brilliant. I mean, it's obvious he knows the law. He's got an aide over there that feeds him stuff also, and he's got control of that courtroom. So
he absolutely does.
So, Judy, let's get to it, because I know part of what everybody wonders, we're not on the jury. We're not going to get to be involved in the deliberations, but we can deliberate right here between ourselves. After watching all this, and like me, you've probably watched 99% of every bit of this trial, what do you think? Do you think he's guilty? Do you think he's not guilty? What do you think?
I think he's absolutely guilty all day long.
And tell me some reasons why you believe that.
I think the main thing for me is the man has a sense that the rules don't apply to him. So if I take that into account and I see the lack of moral compass in every direction, from stealing, having no problem lying, doing what he needs to do for himself. And that's not to say that Alex didn't love his family or doesn't love his family. I can't speak to that. What I can speak to, and what my gut tells me, and what everything that surrounds him tells me, is Alex loves Alex more than he loves anyone else. And whatever it takes for Alex to come out of whatever he's going through, to me, it's apparent that's what he does. I think there are too many factual things that can't be explained away. And I'm talking more along the lines of the OnStar data, the cell phone data, the GPS data. Those things cannot be disputed, nor can they be talked away. So, those kinds of things lead me to believe that he's absolutely guilty. And I've never heard in any of the interviews that I have been able to see that there's been any ounce of remorse, but more importantly, there's no fear for Buster, no fear for himself. And I think there's no fear because he knows exactly who the killer was.
Yeah, well, one of the things that when I watch this, and I obviously read comments, you got to back up with a little bit of common sense when you look at this. For instance, if I pulled up in that secluded place at 10 o'clock at night or whatever it was, we know exactly when, at 10:06 or whatever it was, and I pull up there and my wife and son have been brutally murdered, I'm not going to be standing there walking around talking on the cell phone. I'm going to call 911. It's probably going to be after I get in the car and drive down the road. I'm afraid somebody's going to kill me. I mean, I'm wondering where in the heck is the person that did this? I'm not going to be talking on the phone and calling 15 people walking around. And even going back to the house, he said, to get a gun. I don't know whether that's true or not, but even if it was, I'd be afraid somebody's in the house. I mean, that just doesn't make just common sense. That doesn't fit to me.
That's correct. That's correct. I'd be looking in every direction and afraid to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I would not know what to do, but 911. And then, of course, the next call I would make would be to see how my other son is doing.
Right.
I would be feared for his life.
And he didn't call him till later.
Like 40 minutes later.
Yeah, he called a lot of people before. He called Roro a bunch of times because I'm sure he saw it on the phone. There's so many facets to this. A big thing about this is that probably the biggest thing, and I get the GPS data, the General Motors car tracking, the phone data, the steps he was taking, how fast he was moving, and how fast the phone was moving. All of that's going on. But the reality is he lied about not being at the kennels. Who would lie when your family has just been brutally murdered about where you were when it happened? I mean, that blows my mind right there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that I'll never understand. And no matter how he tries to talk that away, that there's no plausible reason for that.
People are saying he was confused or whatever, but he knew everything else. He gave people's birth dates, full names. And then the other thing and this was brilliant on the part of the prosecution, Creighton Waters, when he let him talk, and when Alex was on the stand, and he kept giving him a lot of rope, and he was saying that he began to lie when he realized that his lawyer friends were saying, you need a lawyer there with you. They were checking for gun residue on his hands and all that, and he figured that he had this transient paranoia or whatever he called it because of his drug addiction. He decided to lie, and they let him keep on talking about that. And then they showed the video when he lied to the first person that got there that had no idea it was even a murder. He didn't know what had happened. He said right there he had not been at the kennels, right?
Absolutely. And I struggled watching Creighton Waters because I thought, why are you just letting him talk incessantly? Well, Alex loves to hear himself talk.
Yeah. And
Alex feels the need to explain and then over-explain and then over-explain one more time and give reasons. So, that whole thing, I think you protest a bit too much. This is Alex. But you're right, with the triggers, he lined up 4 to 5 triggers that Alex agreed. This is why I lied. Yeah, this too. And then he should have dropped the mic the minute he said, you lied the very first person that walked up. Nobody else was there. None of these triggers that you just said were your triggers were ever present. And the video shows otherwise. That was absolutely brilliant.
That's how he ended it, right? He showed that video.
Yes.
And a lot of people missed that. I mean, a lot of people that I read, they didn't get what happened there. I mean,
Right.
And I hopefully the jury is sitting there looking at this. I mean, I hear people make comments, and I know they can't have been watching this the whole time, but they don't have any evidence. It's circumstantial event. They can't prove the timeline. I mean, the timeline, according to the cell phones, I've never seen a murder in my life that can be proved the timeline better than this one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those are just facts. It's nobody's opinion. And so there's no way to explain those things. I think the defense didn't go there because there is no way to explain them. And I hope that's one of the things, along with a couple other things, that the jurors really hold on to, because those are facts.
Yeah, and common sense too.
Yeah.
I mean, you get so involved in the legal jargon and all the back and forth of these attorneys who are theatrical pros, but you just, the common sense of this, it just doesn't make sense. Why would he lie about where he was when his family was murdered? Why would he be walking around out there talking on the phone? And sure, he was upset. I believe that's genuine, but I thought he's upset because of what he had done,
Yeah, I don't doubt some of those expressions that he had. I don't, because I don't know how you could do it. But I believe they're coming from a different source and a different reason.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, when you talk about the common sense, right? So when you think about, does he have motive? Did he have opportunity? Does the science back up any of those things? And the answer is yes to all of them.
Right.
But people can't get their head around, how does a father shoot his son?
Right.
Not so much his wife, but
Right. Well,
how does he shoot his son?
Well, the problem is, the same question can be asked, is how do you take the man's money that's a quadriplegic sitting in a wheelchair, and how do you steal the money of two young girls whose mother and brother got killed in an automobile wreck, and they not get the money and they can't even afford to live? He was a monster. He's a sociopath is what he is. And
That's
so
correct.
I don't have any trouble believing he could do anything because of the stuff he's done. I mean, that's bad in the court, because that can't be used as character assassination. But the same point is, we know all that, so I don't have trouble believing he could do that. I just don't. The other thing, Judy, that was interesting that I really think is part of his guilt is the conversation he first had with his mother's housekeeper, Libby's housekeeper, when he went over there and trying to get her to say how long he'd been there. You remember that piece, I'm sure, right?
Right. So that's Miss Shelley. She was
Yeah.
the maid at Moselle. But yes, Miss Shelley, who clearly on the stand looked uncomfortable. She looked scared to me. I think she really did love this family. No reason not to this point, right? They had been good to her. She loved Miss Libby. That's the impression I got. So for her to make up anything other than just what happened is absolutely ludicrous, and there's no basis for anyone to think that she lied about how long Alex was there. And then, of course, the records prove he was there 21 minutes.
Yeah, she had it.
She said
She
about
had it
20.
right. Yeah, she had it
She
right.
absolutely had it right. And for Alec to get on the stand and then to basically call her a liar was again just shows the level of I don't narcissism. I don't know, but he has no problem spinning the story just as he wants to, regardless of what it does to anyone. But Miss Shelley seemed genuine, totally believable witness, in my opinion. And then again, so did Blanca, right? Blanca has no dog in the fight, right? So she just told the story as was. I found it interesting that it wasn't necessarily that she necessarily found damning evidence, but it was the lack of. So, for example, going into the kitchen when she clearly said the dishes are never done. They're always on the stove, full with what's left. And so the minute I walked in the kitchen and I saw it completely clean, I found that odd.
Yeah, but they later said that all the lawyers, that's another story, and their wives or whoever was out there put that stuff up. So that kind
Well,
of
John Marvin said lawyers, the guys did that, and I'm sorry, I don't see that happening either.
yeah. I'm with you.
No.
I'm with you. So let me ask you this: you think there's a good chance that this jury is going to be deadlocked or hung jury? Why do you think that? What is it that about this case that makes you think the jury will not be unanimous to prove this is beyond a reasonable doubt that he did this?
Because he's quite the manipulator. And when you're in court and you watch him turn to those jurors and look at each one of them as he's telling his story, it takes just one, probably female, to be manipulated and taken in by his theatrics, his crying, the rocking, can't speak, I'm so sorry, all of that. I mean, he's such a skilled manipulator, which of course is why he had all the success he had in the theft and all that. So I think there are people that he is very good at spotting, which again, these are the cases that he took, right? People, all different types of people. What you didn't see was very wealthy people that he did those cases. He did cases where maybe they weren't going to be represented or whatever those things are. But I think he is skilled at finding an individual, at least one, that he can connect with. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think the two women jurors that were crying, I'm not sure exactly why they were crying. They were crying when he was crying. So now he has sympathy and empathy from people. I think it'll just take one of those. I honestly believe there's probably going to be 9 to 10 people that have made their decision. They are clear on where they stand, but you're going to have 1 or 2 people that are going to fall out of that box. And that's my gut. I think it'll just take the one who empathizes with Alex.
Do you have any idea who the foreman or the forelady is on the jury?
I do not. I do not.
Yeah, I think I heard where the judge appointed. He doesn't let them vote. He appoints who the foreman
He did
or forelady.
appoint, just like he appointed the jurors. So he had 4 panels to choose from. And he was the one that finally chose.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. He chose the 12 with the 6 alternates.
So the other thing that is part of the reasonable doubt that I think is, obviously the defense is going to argue it, is they don't have the weapons. It really is to figure out how he did that and got cleaned up or changed it. Of course, the missing clothes, we know that. The defense is not going to talk about that. But how he did that and nobody's found those guns in a short period of time, you know, you wonder, did he have somebody out there helping him, or I think it's feasible that he could do it, but that is something that I've never figured out. You know, how in the heck did he get rid of everything? I know there's water out there in front of the dog pens, and you look at the pictures of that, it's a lot of water, and so that's part of it. What's your thoughts on that?
So and again, speculation, right? So could I envision him having the guns out there or in the back of the golf cart with some clothes covered under a rain jacket or a blue tarp or something like that? I absolutely think that's feasible. He goes down there. I think Maggie and Paul are already there. And I think Alex has those things already prepared. And so the fact that could he shoot them, take the water hose and rinse all that off, throw the stuff in the tarp, throw it back in the golf cart, go back to the house, put it in his vehicle, and leave? I absolutely think that's plausible. Do I think he probably took it to his parents' house? Absolutely plausible. He went back the next morning, I think at 6:30 after the funeral.
Right.
And was back at that house when he's never there early in the morning. Again, what was he doing? I don't know.
Actually, if I remember right, the 6:30 in the morning was when he came in with the blue raincoat, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Gun residue all over it. So are all of those things plausible as we can't find the guns? I think that's a detail, but I don't think it's a deciding detail. The guy has, 1,700 acres? How many ponds? I just think there's multiple opportunities to have gotten rid of those things, but unfortunately, we will never know. We will never know.
There's a couple of things about it. One is there's no evidence of another shooter being out there. You can't tell me that if those dogs were out of that pen, that dogs would be going crazy if there was somebody would have to be there when that video was shown 4 minutes before the murders, and those dogs would be going crazy. There's no evidence anybody was there. That's number one. I mean,
well, and you've got Alec admitting. Alec admitted on the land. There was nobody there.
Yeah, I heard him say that. I thought, why would you even say that if you're trying to get this 2-shooter theory going? The other thing, and Judy, I've been in the funeral business all my life, and I was a coroner for several years. I can promise you whatever difference this makes, I don't know why they're making a big deal out of it. But nobody is going to have a contact wound from a shotgun at the top of the head without the face being blown off. I have been to those sites. There is no way that's going to happen. And I've still got mental pictures of people that I've come on the scene in my career where that was happening. So that theory is crazy. I don't know what they're trying to prove. I think they're just trying to say that he wouldn't. It's one thing for him to shoot his family. It's another thing to put a gun right up to his son's head. I guess that's what they're trying to argue, right?
I would assume so. I agree with you. Again, working in radiology, I have unfortunately x-rayed multiple people in the morgue of things like this. And I agree, there's no way you put that shotgun up to the head like that and it not take your face off, half your face off. Any of those things, break your zygomatic bones in the face, anything. There's nothing there. And I agree. I think at this point, the defense is just doing nothing but trying to confuse people. Offering, the two Oompa Loompa shooters, what were they, 5'2"? Two of them were the first case, and now it's they've turned it totally different. I think they're just trying to muddy the waters, but I think it also bit them in the butt because you had Dr. Kinsey yesterday, who was a shining star.
He was
Said,
amazing.
Look, 6'4" guy, yes, it could absolutely be done. Were there two shooters? No, one shooter. And they use family guns. Now, I think, please tell me, and I also think Dr. Kinsey was the best thing that happened to the state, because the way you could tell he's Southern, right?
Right.
He could speak to those people. He spoke to them in very clear, easy to understand language without being, what's the word? Condescending.
Right.
He spoke very plainly, and he explained every single thing to me conclusively.
Wow. Folks, I'm talking to Judy Thompson. She is, like me, has been following this Murdaugh murder saga for a couple of years. She went to the courthouse. She was in the courthouse when Alec Murdaugh, when he was on the stand. This is interesting stuff. So, Judy, I got to ask you, what do you think about Buster? Is he clean from this stuff? Or what do you think? You got to feel sorry for him in one way, but what do you think his involvement in all this is?
Well, I think Buster is not clean. I do feel sorry for him from the perspective of his whole family is, half his family's gone. His father's fixing to be gone, but I believe that Buster is implicit. I think he knows about the Stephen Smith death. If he wasn't involved in that, I know that Stephen was his tutor. That's a big hole. But I do know from listening again to the podcast and reading some of the other evidence, especially from this South Carolina State Patrol, that his name got mentioned over and over and over again throughout the initial investigation.
Besides these two people that are dead, there are a lot of dead bodies associated with the Murdaugh family, and I'm going to mention some of that in just a minute too. But I'm with you. I saw that, and I have no idea if he killed him, if he covered it up. But there certainly is a lot of rumors that they were involved in it. He was involved in it. But there's a lot of dead bodies associated with this family, and if somebody just tunes in, you don't realize the level of corruption that was going on. And I can see that, in these smaller towns, people like this are very powerful, and they do people favors, that they get people off of stuff, and there could be people on that jury that Alec Murdaugh kept their son or brother or somebody out of jail because of his power.
And as far as Buster is concerned, my observation of Buster in the courtroom, and again, not knowing the young man, he almost seemed pained to be there. Not so much that it was hard to listen to it, but I'm not so sure he believes it.
I think the wheels are turning in his head, and the wheels are turning in John Marvin's heads too. And we saw him on the stand, and we know all that. And that, I'm going to tell you, that was one of the funniest moments in the trial. I didn't realize how funny it was when he started talking about the diarrhea accident. In fact, Judy, right now, I'm going to play a clip from that.
He had diarrhea. It just couldn't control it.
And then,
And I say diarrhea, I'm not talking about at a restroom. I'm talking about in the car, in his pants.
okay.
The comments that I read on TikTok, because most people are just tuning into that and they have no idea what's going on in trial. They're asking, what in the world could have happened for him to tell that story? He said that's a little brother getting back. He's been waiting forever to tell that story to the world. I was laughing in bed so hard last night I couldn't get my breath reading the comments.
And the memes with it depends. Alec Murdaugh depends.
Yeah.
The little memes that have come out.
Yeah.
With
Oh
that.
my.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, we're talking about Buster. So talk about, these jailhouse calls. I mean, those have been some bizarre conversations. We hadn't been privy to all of them. So there's probably a lot worse going on. But I remember when he's talking to Buster about, there's a couple of things. He's worried about it getting in law school. He's in jail. And I assume, I don't know when these conversations took place. Had he already been charged with murder? It was just the financial stuff at that point. I'm not sure. But he paid somebody some money to get him back in law school after he got thrown out for plagiarism, after Buster got thrown out. And then he's telling him he should go hunting out there. What do you think of that conversation? That if you can't go, maybe Jim Griffith, who's his lawyer, can go. What were you thought about? What did you think about that?
Well, the conspiracy theorist in me thinks it's all code.
Yep.
I don't understand why he would tell Buster, you gonna go hunting? And Buster's like, you get the impression Buster's not necessarily following him. And
Right.
and it jumps from deer hunting to some other kind of hunting. And, I don't even think Jim Griffin hunts, but, you and Jim should go out there. Well, why? Well, to get a deer. And,
Right.
and, Buster's like, well, I don't feel any need to go back out there. And I just don't think Buster was picking up what Alex was laying down, to be quite honest.
Or either he was very smart and had more realization than Alec, that it was being recorded and he didn't want to
Right.
be. But that was bizarre, and that's probably an indication that there's some of the evidence out there somewhere.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. In fact, I made a joke. Somebody should go dig up under that tree that's bent that Alex is standing on top of. Dig up under that tree.
with different clothes on than he had
Yeah.
when he came back out there. So
Yeah.
he definitely changed clothes, and of course he said he went in and took a shower before he went out there. But the truth is, the clothes he had on in that picture, nobody's seen them.
Correct.
So there's definitely something going on. So let's talk about these other people. I was reading about Akeem Pickney, and I don't know what the chronological order of these things are, but Alec was representing him. He's the quadriplegic.
Correct.
And somebody unplugged the machine at his nursing home is when he died.
Correct. Yes, that his life support was unplugged for about 30 minutes, and then he passed.
So you wonder what that had to do. I mean, you probably wouldn't wonder about it unless you didn't know all this other stuff, but that was just very strange. And then you mentioned Stephen Smith. They found him lying in the road, and the most bizarre thing about that is Randy Murdaugh, Alec's brother, immediately called that family and said, I will represent you for nothing. I won't charge you. Do you remember reading that or hearing that?
Well, absolutely. He was the second call to the father behind the coroner.
Yeah.
I don't even think the police had gotten back over there, but Randy called the father. At least that's what the father had said. It was the second call he had that Randolph offered. So I had also read, and I don't know if this is accurate, that John Marvin went out to the scene at 4 a.m. where the patrol was out there. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it appears to me that every time something happens, they circle the wagons. And
There's no question. So there is a fact that John Marvin went out to the scene when Paul had his car wreck and he was DUI in his truck with his girlfriend, and he went out and cleaned all the beer cans out, got the alcohol out. He cleaned all that up ahead of time. It's also a fact that he went down before the family could even go out to that scene and personally pulled the boat out of the water that in the boat crash when Mallory was killed. So, and then he was out cleaning out the mess there. He's definitely the cleanup guy. He goes behind it, but they're all very controlling. There's no question that they use their power to their advantage, right?
Well, absolutely. And the one other bizarre thing about the Stephen Smith was, and again, this was the South Carolina patrolman, thought it was odd that they did a rape kit. Now, they don't typically do rape kits on a hit and run. So there was a reason for that. I don't know what the reason is.
Well, they were sweeping it under the rug. I think what happened, one person that was working, is no longer working, a patrolman or whatever, said there's no way this is a hit and run. This somebody
Correct.
put this guy out here, and everybody else they'd written it off as a hit and run, and he didn't believe it. And that was all because of their power and their control over the system. And then you get to Gloria Satterfield, who literally raised Alex's kids, and she allegedly falls down a flight of steps, and then he decides he's going to sue himself and tells these kids who really probably are not capable of making all the decisions that must be made, I'm going to look after you. I'm going to sue myself. He got $4 million, and they never got a dime from that. They eventually did from another fund, but they didn't get a dime. He stole their money, and then you can't help but wonder, and I know they're exhuming her. I haven't read what the results or whether they even have them to go reinvestigate that. They wrote that up as a natural death. It couldn't be natural if you fell down your steps. I saw the copy of the death certificate. It would at least have to be accidental. It's certainly not natural.
Correct.
So they were controlling the coroner who put that on there. That's who would do it. And so that's another one that you can't help but wonder what happened there.
Well, I agree. And what caught me and is the 911 call where Maggie makes it. To me, again, she doesn't sound really distressed to me. When Paul gets on the phone, he sounds aggravated. Quit asking me questions, just get somebody out here. Now, if it's true that Paul really loved her and had a picture of her in his wallet, the only picture he had, I don't know if it was prior to this accident or after this accident, but the callousness of this family over this woman, as you said, who raised those boys.
Right.
It again shows the level of callousness that this family feels for people other than themselves.
Just in case I didn't say it, Gloria Satterfield fell down the steps at Moselle at their house, the same property that the murders happened. The murders happened down at the kennels, but that was another death on that property that was something. There was shenanigans going on there. There's no question about that. I mean, he sued them. He got a lot of money off of it. So let's keep moving. Just briefly, this roadside shooting thing. What's your theory on that? Do you think he was really cousin Eddie to shoot him in the head so he would die and his son would get the insurance? I hadn't believed that from the beginning.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Alex loves Alex more than anyone else. Alex is a coward. I don't think Alex looks out for anyone else. I think he did probably call Eddie out there. And the funny thing is, the car that he's in, those tires don't flatten.
Right.
So the Mercedes, so that whole thing is just stupid. But Eddie comes out there, and I think, now what do I know? I think Alex had planned for them to have some kind of struggle. Wouldn't surprise me that Eddie gets shot and killed, and Eddie gets blamed for all the murders.
That's what I thought from the beginning. He was going to shoot him and kill him and say he's the one that killed my family. And, we got to understand there's two big important things. The day of the murders, he had been confronted by his chief financial officer, that law firm, that there was a lot of money missing. And that was the day of the murders. He had the 3 days later, he had the hearing coming up on his son with the boat case, but he had been confronted with that. So that happens. The day of the Monday after, I think it was on the Monday after Labor Day weekend, the day that cousin Eddie and him on the roadside shooting, he had been terminated from the law firm. I mean, that's both of those things. It's a pattern of that affecting what he's doing out here. Don't you agree? I mean, how can you overlook that?
Absolutely. I mean, talk about triggers. I mean, I reacted this way because of this happened. That's exactly what he does. And I think the realization between the financials being due, asked to resign, which is craziness. Yeah, I think he absolutely felt his world was absolutely crumbling around him.
So you believe the motive that the state's putting forth, that people have such a hard time getting their head around, but you believe that, of course, they don't have to prove motive to start with, but
Correct.
But there's certainly their theory, and the reason they got all this financial stuff in is because their theory is his world was collapsing, and if he got rid of his son Paul, then that boat case would go away. If he got rid of his wife, then the property was in his wife's name at Moselle. He had sold it to her for $5 and several years earlier. Then that would go back. He could borrow money on it as long as he wasn't the one killing them. That's kind of what the state's theory is, and I kind of agree with them. Do you?
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree.
So we won't get into all the financial crimes, folks. He's got 99 charges. He stole from anybody he could steal from. He would look at people in the eye and tell them he was going to help them, and people that desperately needed help. And he had some accomplices. We won't get into all that with Russell Lafitte and all that at the bank. He's already been found guilty. But he was a monster to steal money from people that had been through that kind of drama and trauma. Normal people don't do that. And normal people may steal one time, but consistently taking advantage of people like that the red flag goes up big time. So he's got so many financial charges. So really, Judy, the reality is in this case, whether he's found not guilty or is hung and then they retried or he's found guilty, this trial is just going to determine whether he's going to be in a dungeon the rest of his life or he's going to have a potential to be jailed in a country club type atmosphere as a white collar criminal, right?
Exactly right. And that's the pill that's hard for me to swallow, because people say, well, he'll never see the light of day again if they don't find him guilty. Yeah, but it matters where he spends the rest of his life. And quite honestly, I want him in a dungeon.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.